a notification in a second. We will have this posted tomorrow. We're trying to get it up very quickly because I know some of the regions have their deadline on Friday. So I want to be able to try to get it up quickly so that if you need to review it after this, or if there's other advisors that were not able to be on today, that they can watch it tomorrow or Friday. Um, so if everybody would just, a couple of two things, just stay on mute if you would, and then save your questions until the end because we will do a Q&A at the end. And a lot of times you might have a question that might be answered later in the webinar. So just save your questions until the end. We'll do a Q&A then. And we will go ahead and get started. So I am going to share my screen so that we can go through the regional conference table to start. Okay. So I'm sure most of you by this point are familiar with our Florida HOSA website. If you hover over conferences and you click on regional conferences, you will see the regional conference table. We update this very regularly, sometimes daily, definitely weekly. As soon as we get the information from the regional advisor, we are in and updating this and uploading the new updated file to the website. So if you are not aware, which you should already be, as the regional advisors have, a lot of them have already communicated information on their winter spring regional conference. And that's what this webinar is focused on. So not the fall leadership conference, but the winter spring CE conference, because we're going to go through competitive events and how to register for those. So if you have not already been told when your winter spring CE conference is, please go to this table and find your region and look in this column here under winter spring CE conference, and it will have the date of your conference, the time if we have it already. If we do not have the time from the regional advisors, it will not show that. And then the online registration deadline, which is the deadline of when you will need to, as the advisor, will need to go in and register all of your members for the conference. And then if the region is doing online testing prior to the conference, that online testing window will also be listed on here. So the online registration deadline, very important. It is highlighted in blue. And then the online testing window, which is also very important. And we will get more into that later in the webinar, but that is highlighted in yellow. So just make sure you're aware of the location, the date of the conference, but also, again, the registration deadline and the online testing window. Very important to know those dates. I do know Gold Coast, unfortunately, we weren't able to get this webinar in before the Gold Coast registration deadline passed. So I do apologize about that. But I think we looked at the registration and it all looks good on that end. We've just had a lot going on with the Welcome Back Rally and our fall leadership conference. So I wanted to try to get this webinar in before. I know some of you have the deadline of November 1st coming up. So we wanted to get this done before that so you know how to register for your winter spring conference. So again, here's the table. Please make sure you know your conference date and then the deadlines. I wanted to note a couple of things because we're going to move over to the HOSA system. So you'll log in with your login information into the HOSA system. And then if you scroll down here, you'll see conferences. And you should see your regional conference. You're going to see all the tiles. Unfortunately, that's just the way the system is set up. So any active conference that we have for the state, you're going to see it on your end. That's why Lloyd goes in and you'll see for like the Sunrise region, he capitalizes Sunrise because we have Sunrise, Sunset, Suncoast. So you just want to make sure, because you'll see all of the conference tiles, you want to make sure you're clicking into your specific region's tile. If you do not see your conference tile, so that's going to be Treasure Coast, both middle school and secondary, post-secondary, as well as Springs, secondary and post-secondary. You will not see your tile listed yet, and that is because the regional conference, it has not opened yet. So for Treasure Coast, your tile will not appear until December 1st. Which is when it is set to open for registration. And then Springs, secondary and post-secondary, you will see that actually this Friday. It opens up November 1st. If you are in Springs Middle School, you will see it's listed right here.
Hey,
You'll
Jackie,
already, yes.
can Lloyd, jumping in here. Springs is already open. It opened on October 1st, but the Springs Middle School closes this Friday, actually tomorrow, I'm sorry, on October 31st. You'll see it in the second row down.
Yes, and another thing to point out up here on the top, under conferences on the right, if you click on this drop down and you click future, you will, in your Treasure Coast, you will see the Treasure Coast conference tile. You just won't be able to do anything until December 1st, which is when it goes live for registration. So I just wanted to point out those two things. Another thing to point out, we did this with our state leadership conference last year, where we had, seasoned advisors, you're going to already kind of be used to this and aware of this. But new advisors who were not advisors last year, this is something to note. So similar to what we did for our state leadership conference, some of the regions have a middle school conference tile, and then some have, and if they do have a middle school one, then they have a separate one for secondary and post-secondary collegiate. And then other regions just have one conference tile for their entire conference. So for all divisions, so middle school, secondary, and post-secondary in one conference tile. So I just wanted to point that out. Make sure if you are in Suncoast, Springs, or Treasure Coast, please note that you have a middle school conference tile, and then you also have a secondary, post-secondary collegiate tile for registration. So if you're a middle school chapter, you will register in the middle school tile. If you're a secondary or post-secondary, you will, for those three regions only, you'll register in the secondary and post-secondary tile for your regional conference. If you are one of those regions, your middle school tile will only have middle school events, and then the secondary and post-secondary will only have secondary and post-secondary events. So just know that. And then if you are a middle high school, we do have some chapters that are middle high school, and they have both middle schoolers and secondary members as part of the chapter. Please note, if you're in Suncoast, Springs, or Treasure Coast, you will need to register your middle school members in the middle school tile, and then your secondary members in the secondary, post-secondary tile. So you can see right here is a perfect example. The third tile on my screen, Suncoast, it's SS and PSC conference. So that's for secondary and post-secondary. So if you're secondary and post-secondary, you register in here. 2 tiles down is the Suncoast Middle School Conference. So if you're middle school, you'll need to register in that tile. So I just wanted to point that out. If you are a region that has all divisions in one tile for registration, so like this first one here, Sunrise, all divisions will register in this one tile. Please note, when you're registering, check the name of the competitive event, and we'll go through registration, so you'll get to see this, but check the name of the competitive event that you are choosing for your member. because again, the multiple divisions in one registration, you don't want to be registering your middle school members for a secondary or post-secondary competitive event. We do review the registration, and we do a lot of times catch those errors, but not always. So you need to make sure that you're doing the registration correctly, because if not, your middle school member might be competing with secondary members, or vice versa. So please make sure that you're checking that, especially if you're a middle high advisor and you have both divisions in your one chapter, that you're looking at that very closely. And again, we will go through registration to make sure you all are understanding how to do that. But a lot of the middle school competitive events, and you'll see it on the guidelines page, but a lot of the middle school competitive events have foundations of in front of the competitive event name. So that's a good way to kind of decipher that, but not all of the middle school events have that foundations of in front of the event. So you just need to make sure you're double checking. And we'll go through and I'll give you guys some suggestions of ways to go through and double check your registration to make sure it's done correctly. Please remember that you can only register your member for one regular competitive event. So they can do as many recognition events as they would like, but they can only be registered to compete in one competitive event. That's very important, so please make sure you know that. Okay, so let's go through how to actually do the registration. So I'll give you some examples. We'll go through how to just register for a normal competitive event, but then I'll show you how to also register for teams. So we'll just go into Sunrise as an example. So this is what you should see on your end once you go into your regions tile. And then in the second blue box under registrations, you'll click this red box with the plus sign. Once you click that, it will pull a drop down of all of your affiliated members. So that's another thing to note, is if you click that and there's nothing there, it's because you haven't affiliated your members. You can only register for a conference if your members are affiliated. So if they're not affiliated, you won't have anything there, and then you'll have to affiliate them. So if you have not affiliated yet, please do so as soon as possible, especially if your registration deadline is Friday. So get those affiliations in as soon as possible. So you'll see here on the left, this blue register button. So you just want to go through, make sure you're choosing the correct person, click register, and then it will automatically populate to how you affiliated them. So up at the top under registration type, however you affiliated them, if you affiliated them as a middle school member, if you affiliated them as a secondary or post-secondary, it will automatically populate that. So you just want to double check that that's correct. The contact information of how you affiliated them will also appear populated here as well. And then if there's any options or activities for the regional conference, so some conferences provide a lunch. You might be able to put any dietary restrictions in there, t-shirts. So you just click the options activities. So Sunrise has t-shirt options, so you would click the size for that, but that's what you'll see here under options activities. Again, t-shirts, lunch, dietary restrictions, those types of things. But here's where you really want to focus: competitive events. So right here on the right, it says register for competitive events. You'll click this drop down, and because Sunrise, all of the divisions register within that one tile, it's going to have every single event that is being offered. So you need to look through here, like I said, make sure foundations of HOSA if it's middle school, and then down here HOSA if it's secondary or post-secondary, just making sure you're clicking the correct competitive event. So you'll just look through here. Let's say we'll put Autumn in dental terminology. So we have her registered here, dental terminology, you'll see that, and then you can press save. And then it will load to that same screen that we saw when we first came. And now you can see that we have Autumn registered for the conference. It is a post-secondary collegiate registration because that is how she is affiliated in the system. So she would be competing in the post-secondary collegiate division. And then she is registered for dental terminology. So that's an easy one. And then we'll move on onto team events. So again, clicking that plus, that red plus sign, will register Lloyd. And again, everything will be populated here. If it is not so here's a perfect example too under registration type, because we have him affiliated as an honorary life member, so it's not populated here. So if for some reason it's not already populated, you just need to go in and make sure you're choosing whether it's an advisor, middle school member, post-secondary, or secondary. And it doesn't give me the option. So hold on one second. Because he's listed as an honorary life, so you can't register an honorary life member for a competitive event. So we'll choose Emily here. Again, populated up here at the top, registration type, secondary. Scrolling down, again, don't forget the options activities if there are one. Competitive events, register for competitive events, again, drop down. And then let's put her in HOSAble. And again, she's secondary, so you're going to want to register her in HOSAble, not foundations of HOSAble. That would be if it was middle school. So you'll click HOSAble. Now you'll see here, because HOSAble is a team event, it's going to have this section that says select team members. If you click in here, nothing appears because Emily is the first person we're registering for HOSAble for that team event. So there's going to be nothing listed there. So if it's the first person that you're registering for the teamwork event, you just leave it as blank, and it'll have the competitive event listed right there, and you just press save. And it'll bring you back again to the main screen where you can continue the registrations. So this is something to note right here. Please pay attention to this. You will see right here, HOSAble, and then it says team with a question mark. You don't want question marks. So if you're reviewing your registrations and you see a question mark by the team, there is something wrong. So the reason there's a question mark in this instance is because Emily is the first person that's part of this HOSAble team. So every first person you're putting into any sort of team competitive event will have a question mark. But as soon as you add a teammate, as long as you link the two teammates together into one team correctly, it will have a question mark if something is wrong. So I will show you how to link. So again, this red plus, and we will register Yashvi, and we will put her again or we'll move her to secondary because it has to be the same division. And then competitive events right here, same thing. Click the drop down, click HOSAble. Now, because there is another member already in that team event for HOSAble, which is Emily, you can search for Emily's name. So you just type in, and then she should appear. You can search for anybody's name that's in the team, as long as they're already registered for that competitive event. So as you remember, when I registered Emily, when I clicked into there, nothing came down in the drop down because she was the first person registered for the HOSAble competitive event. But since she's already registered and Yashvi is in her team, you'll just click the name and then press save. And it'll bring you back, and you will see now for Emily, there is a number next to the team. So it doesn't have that question mark anymore because again, that's not a one person team. She's linked to somebody else that is in a team. Now, something to note is that many of the team events it's 2 to 6 people on the team. So it ranges on how many people you can have. Um, as long as you meet the minimum number that is required based on the guidelines, and those are all, again, all listed in the guidelines for each event, what the range is for the teams. As long as you meet that minimum, it will populate, and you link the competitors together, it will populate a number. If you forget to put somebody in the team that is part of that team, but you have the minimum number of team members that is required, it's not going to flag it. So I want to show you for this instance what it would look like if you stopped registration here. Because you will see for HOSA, it is required that there's 4 team members. That is one of our team events that has a specific number. There's a couple, but for HOSA, you have to have 4. So it will flag it in the registration if there is not 4. And I want to show you what that will look like so you understand when you're reviewing it, because I am going to go through the 3 steps of how you should review your registration. So in this instance here, again, if you're looking just at the registration, you can see, okay, there are no question marks. That's the first thing to look for. So if you're looking through your registrations and you see any team number that has a question mark, there's a problem, and it's because they're not, either they're the first person registered for that team and you haven't registered anybody else for that team, or they're not linked to a team and they're supposed to be. So that's the first step you want to do, is look through this registration page right here, especially for the teams, but also for the other registrations. So you would want to make sure, okay, Autumn's registered for dental terminology. You want to make sure you have every person that's in your chapter that is supposed to be registered for the regional conference, that they're on here, that they're registered for the correct event, and then that they're linked in the same team. So the first step with the question marks, you don't see any question marks here, so we're good on that end. But then you want down here on the left, under view, you want to click that and click competitive events. This is going to take you to the competitive event view for your registration. So on this view, you'll be able to see everybody that you have registered for whatever event it may be, and it is in alphabetical order. So we don't have anybody for biomedical debate yet or biotechnology, but you would want to go through this list. You can see dental terminology. As soon as someone's registered for the event, it will turn blue instead of yellow. So you can see we have Autumn. This is a great way to just go through and check, okay, yeah, dental terminology, I'm supposed to have 3 competitors competing in that, Joe, Jane, and Sue. And then you can double check that they're registered under that. If we keep going down, you will see, so HOSA, it is blue now because we have people registered for it, but it's red. It's highlighted in red. And that is because we don't have 4 people on the team. So again, if the team event has to have a specific number of people and you do not meet that number, it will be red. Now, I had mentioned previously that a lot of the team events, and the reason I'm focusing so much on team events is because it's the most confusing, and that's where we see the most errors in registration. So I really want to make sure you all understand how to do this. And then again, if you have questions, please save them till the end. I can always go back to this screen and go through it if you have additional questions. But for the other team events, if there is a range, again, 2 to 6, let's say HOSA was a different team event that had a range of 2 to 6. This would not be red because we have met the minimum number of teammates that is required, which would be 2. So you don't want to only use this competitive event view to check your registration, because if you forget to put somebody on the team that they're supposed to be on, but you've met the minimum requirement for team members, it's not going to flag it as red. So again, that's why I'm saying there's a 3-step process here. So you want to first check your registrations, which is what we were just on. Again, going through not just for the team events, but for everybody. Going through making sure whoever you have coming and competing at the conference is registered, number 1, but then that they're registered for the correct competitive event. And then if they're registered for a team event, that there's no question marks, and that they have a team number associated with their registration, like Emily and Yashvi have. So that, again, that's the first step. Then going back down here on the left under view, clicking competitive events. Again, this is the second step. So going through and double checking that every person you registered is listed here under their competitive event. So again, we have Autumn, and then going down, we do have Emily and Yashvi in HOSA Bowl, but again, because it's supposed to be 4 competitors, it is flagged red. So you would need to then go back into your registration. So going down here again on the bottom left, clicking registrations, going back to your registration and adding 2 more members into HOSA Bowl. And we can do that really quick so I can show you what it'll look like when it's correct. So we'll register Shamaz for HOSA Bowl as well. And I type in any team member's name. So I could type in Emily, I could type in Yashvi, whatever I type in, it should populate. So here's the team. And if you have multiple teams competing in HOSA Bowl, you want to make sure that you're selecting the correct team that competitor is supposed to be in with the names associated. So down here on the right, click save. And it will take us back to the registration page where you can see Shamaz here in HOSA Bowl Team 10185. So we will go ahead and register Rishith as the 4th teammate. And again, typing in a name of any of the team members, clicking that, pressing save. And it will take you back to that registration. So now you can see, okay, we have a HOSA Bowl team, team 10185 with 4 members. If you go back down here on the left under view, again, click competitive events. If we scroll down to HOSA Bowl again, now you will see it's no longer red because we have met the required number of teammates. But again, keep in mind, please, for the team events that there is a range, it will be red until you meet the minimum requirement. So it's up to you to make sure that you're putting the correct number of teammates in that team for that competitive event, because it will not flag you if you've registered 3, but you're supposed to have actually 5 in that team. So just keep that in mind. So that is the second way to double check that. And then the last way, the third way, down here under reports, if you click that, you can click registration summary. And then down here at the bottom, now it'll have all of your students, what they're registered in. So again, another way to make sure you're looking and seeing, okay, Autumn's registered for dental terminology, Emily is registered for HOSA Bowl. And then another way to make sure too, for any options or activities, those will also be listed here. So if we register t-shirts or anything, that will be listed there with the size, so you can double check that as well. But if you scroll all the way down, you can check here the third way. So you can check your quantity. So you can check, okay, I have 4 secondary, 1 post-secondary, or if you're middle high, again, 4 middle school, 1 secondary. You can check that here. And then under events, you can make sure that you have, okay, I have one person in dental terminology. Oh, wait, I know that I'm supposed to have, there's actually 2 of my students that are competing in dental terminology. So that's a good way to check, okay, I'm obviously missing 1 person, scrolling back up and seeing, okay, I have Autumn, but John Joe is supposed to be registered for dental terminology too, so I have to go back in and register him. So again, a 3-check system at least, because if you forget to register one of your members for either a team event or a regular other competitive event, and it's past the deadline, that's going to be up to the regional advisor whether they're going to allow a late registration. We don't at the state level, and a lot of regions follow that as well. So that's why I say, especially if you're a new advisor, check this 4 or 5 times. Again, using that 3 system step, with the registration, then the competitive event view, and now this registration summary. And then just check it again. You can check all 3 again as well. I always tell all new advisors, like, you can't overcheck. You can't check enough. You want to make sure that you have all of your members registered and that they're in the correct event, and that you're not missing any team members too, because how awful would it be if you have a team of 5 that's competing in an event and you only register 4 of them, and then 1 person can't compete at the regional level because it's past the registration deadline. So again, we usually in most circumstances and situations will side with the regional advisors. So they really are the ones that are going to be making that decision whether they would allow a late registration. And again, many of them don't. So please keep that in mind when you are doing your registration, that you need to be triple, quadruple checking the registration to make sure that it is correct. The other thing I want to show you all, 2 things. So going back to view under registrations, let's say I accidentally registered Autumn for I registered for dental terminology, but she's supposed to be in a different event. Or I accidentally registered Autumn and she's not actually competing or coming to the regional conference at all. You can go back here in this gray eye under her registration. If I need to delete it completely, I can go all the way down here, and on the bottom left in red, I can delete registration altogether. Or if I register her in the wrong event, I can just click here under dental terminology. I can press delete, and I can go back in here and I can register her for the correct event. Let's say she's doing epidemiology, and then I can save it. So those are 2 things to note as well. And again,
Jackie?
now you see, yes.
For what happens if we spelled Autumn's name wrong? How would we correct that?
So if we spelled Autumn's name wrong for
Right.
registration, because it
For
would be
registration.
populated. Okay, so that's a good thing to note. So it's going to be, when you go in here under registration, and like I said, clicking this, it's going to be populated how you affiliated the member. So if you misspelt the member's name, it's going to be misspelt here. So let's say I go back and I'm in Autumn's registration and I see, and I'm like, oh, I accidentally, affiliated Autumn incorrectly or misspelled her name, and I fix it here and I press save. What you have in the registration is not going to match what they are affiliated as. if that makes sense. So changing something on the registration doesn't change the actual competitor's affiliation or what we see on our end in terms of, if it's like at the SLC, it's gonna show up how it is affiliated. The other thing I want to note too is the invoice. So many of you will need an invoice for your regional conference if there is a regional conference fee. So down here on the bottom under reports, if you click that, if you click generate invoice for recent registrations, it will populate the invoice for the conference. Now, if you go back, if you generate an invoice and you go back in and you make any changes, you will need to generate a new invoice. And unfortunately, the system is not set up that it puts both on one, essentially, and you're not going to see all the students' names. What you will see if you go back after this and make another change is you will see your previous balance. And then you will see here whoever you added after the first invoice was generated. So in that instance, you might need to print off both invoices and give them both to your bookkeeper. But this is very important to note. Again, another way you can make sure that this doesn't show the event itself that they're registered in, but another way you can make sure that you have every single student that you're supposed to have registered, that they're on there. But this is what's very important to note, especially for your bookkeepers, because if they've sent payment to Global National HOSA, they're going to have Global National HOSA as a vendor. If they've sent payment to us before, they're going to have Florida HOSA as a vendor. But these regional conference fees, if there is a fee, if there is a due for the conference, those do not come to us. So please do not send them to Florida HOSA. The payment needs to go to whoever is listed up here in the top middle in blue. So for Sunrise in this instance, it needs to go to Dr. Sood at American Heritage. That's where if there's a payment, that's where that will go. So please make sure you are checking the invoice and letting your bookkeeper know that they need to be sending the payment not to Global National HOSA, not to Florida HOSA, but to whoever is listed, whoever and whatever school is listed at the top of the invoice. Okay, so that really covers registration for your regional conferences. One thing I want to note, and this is a lot of information, and again, that's why we're recording this. So please take notes on this part, especially because we get so many questions about proctors. And a lot of new advisors don't even know what that is and what to do. And so I really want to go through kind of the whole process of proctoring so that you all understand what it is, what you need to do as the advisor, and how that whole thing will flow and function. So if your region is doing online testing prior to the conference, there will be an online testing window. So if your region is not doing online testing, you can basically ignore what I'm about to say, except you should listen because they may in the future, they may, choose, if they're not doing it this year, they may choose to do it next year. So it's good to know the information. But again, if your region is doing online testing prior to the conference, please pay close attention to this next part because it can get confusing. So if they're doing online testing, there is an online testing window. Again, going back to this regional conference table, if there is online testing and there's a window, it will be highlighted in yellow. If they're doing hard copy testing at the conference, that will be notated as well. So you need to make sure you know when your online testing window is. For Space Coast, if you are in Space Coast region, please note your online testing is soon. It is mid-November. So you will need to start this process that I'm about to go through quickly. Everybody else is December, some of them in January, so you do have a little bit of time. But again, Space Coast, please make sure you're paying attention to this part, especially because you need to have this done very quickly if it's not already done. So within the online testing window that's notated on the regional conference table or whatever your regional advisors have shared with you, you as the advisor need to establish a proctor or more than one proctor to proctor the online tests. So if you're in your account and you scroll down here, you will see online testing. It's the last blue box. Here is where you will go to add proctors, and I will show you how to do this. If you are a new advisor but have taken over for another advisor in the past, you will most likely have proctors listed in here. Whether they are enabled or disabled, you will most likely have proctors listed. If you're an established chapter, but you're just a new advisor for that chapter. If you are a brand new chapter, first ever, you will have nothing there. But either way, this is where you will go to add your proctors. So you as the advisor are responsible for finding the proctor or proctors if there's more than one, and figuring out which days and or times you're going to be doing your online testing for your students. So you do not have to put those days and times into the system. We don't necessarily need to know that. You, your proctor, and your students need to know that so that they know when they need to go and take their online test prior to the conference. For Space Coast, please note your testing window is very short. You have 3 days. So you need to make sure that you're considering that as the advisor when you are planning for when your testing will be, because you do only have those 3 days. Other regions, most other regions, it's about a week that you have to do the online testing. So again, you are responsible for setting up those days and times as the advisor within that online testing window that your region and regional advisors have set for you. Advisors cannot be proctors. This is very important. You cannot proctor as the advisor. You cannot proctor your own students' tests. So the proctor needs to be, and the proctor cannot be a student, it cannot be a HOSA member, it cannot be another student that's not in HOSA, not the advisor, and no students. It needs to be another faculty member at the school. It can be another teacher, it can be a computer lab instructor, it could be the librarian, it could be the principal. I mean, it doesn't matter who, but it needs to be an adult that is teaches or works at the school. I also want to note for you as advisors to please pick proctors who you trust, who are ethical, who are going to follow the rules. I want to let everybody know that we do, after the online testing window has passed, our office does go through the tests. So we do look at the scores and we look at the timestamps and we do go through all of that. So if there's any questions that come up, we will be contacting you or the proctor. So please make sure that you're choosing a proctor whom you trust and who is ethical and will follow the rules set that we send out for them to proctor the exam. And then please make sure that they know they need to be there at the set time that you've chosen for those exams. This is also very important. Competitors or teams that are competing in the same event, and again, these are only events that have a test. So there's plenty of events that don't have a test. So that doesn't matter at this point. These are just for events that have a test. If the competitors and teams are in the same event, they should test at the same time as much as possible. Obviously, if a student is sick or has a doctor's appointment or something, something like that, and it's out of your control, for the most part, that's okay. But we really want to stress that you want to set times, and it doesn't all have to be the same day, the same time. I mean, if that's how you want to do it, that's completely up to you. If you want to say, okay, hey, no, from Wednesday, from blah, 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 we're doing all of the testing. If you can't make it, you don't test. I mean, that's fine, whatever way you want to do it. But you don't have to do it that way. You can say, okay, on Wednesday, we're going to do this event, this event, this event, and this event. And all the competitors that are in these 4 events need to come and test on Wednesday from 12 to 2 or whatever. And then same thing, on Thursday, okay, these other 5 events, everybody that's in these events need to come and test at this particular day and time. The reason for that is there is the potential if a competitor takes the test and there's competitors that still haven't taken it and are taking it the next day. There is that problem or issue where they can then tell the other competitors the questions on the test. So you want to just try to mitigate that as much as possible. So please just try to make sure that whenever you're scheduling for testing, you're getting your competitors that are in the same events, teams especially to test on the same day at the same time. Please make sure you're separating the competitor, and it's not you, it's the proctor, but please make sure the proctors are separating the competitors physically when they're in the room. So not, right next to each other at a table where they can look at each other's tests and talk to each other and be on their phones or whatever. You want to make sure that the proctor is spacing them out. If you don't have a very large room to do the testing in, you might want to consider spreading out the times that you're testing, and maybe there's a time every day for certain competitive events, and you do it that route instead of all at once. But please just make sure that the competitors are spread out and that the proctor knows that for the testing. We don't determine from the Florida HOSA State Office the ratio of proctors to students. So make sure you're aware if your school or district has any specific ratios of, if there's 50 students coming to take a test, you have to have 2 proctors. If there's any sort of policies like that, please make sure you're following that. But we don't determine that. You could have 60 competitors come and have only 1 proctor. Might be a little bit difficult for that proctor, but that's up to you. Again, just making sure you know your school or district policies for that. Also, please keep in mind that your proctor and you, when you're scheduling these, know our business hours. So we are 8 to 5. A lot of times we do work after 5. That is true, but that doesn't mean that that's an everyday thing, and that doesn't mean that we can necessarily answer the phone outside of the business hours. So again, our business hours 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Please make sure you know that, and can, when you're planning for your testing, the date, the time frame at least, that you're keeping that in mind, because what we've had in the past for issues with proctoring is we'll get a call at like 6 p.m. for a proctor that's sitting down to do the online testing for the students, and there's some type of issue. And again, if it's outside our business hours, there is no guarantee that we will be able to answer or address the situation. So please just keep that in mind and try to make sure that you're testing during our business hours if possible, in case any issues arise. You can always contact Global National HOSA. They are a few hours behind us in Texas. So if there's any issues and you're not able to reach us, you can call them for assistance, but that's not a guarantee that they'll be able to answer and help. But you can, the proctor or yourself can call if there's any issues that come up and you can't reach us. Okay, so adding the proctor, it's very easy. Like I had mentioned, there any proctors that have already been added for your chapter will already be in there. As of right now, we have Zach Love in here, and there's this button that says enable because right now he is disabled as a proctor in our system. So if there's any proctors in the system already that you are not using this year, or if there's any advisors, yourself, or anybody else that's an advisor or a previous advisor that's in here that is not proctoring this year. And again, you as the advisor should not be the proctor. You'll want to go in and disable the proctor, because if any proctors that are enabled, when the automated email, which I'll talk more about in just a second, but when the automated email goes out, it will go out to all of the enabled, all of the proctors that are already enabled, that aren't disabled. So you just want to make sure that if they're not proctoring an exam this year for your students for the regional conference, that they are not enabled as a proctor in here. So it's just, you just click enable or disable right there. It's very easy. If you need to add a proctor, you click down here on the bottom left, this plus sign. Very simple. First name, last name, email. So that's all you need to put in there. Press save, and then they will appear down here under your proctors list. So it's very easy to add a proctor. Please make sure, this is very important, please make sure you're adding your proctor in advance. The system takes overnight to process adding proctors. So if you're waiting until the last day of your online test to add a proctor, it's not going to populate the proctor until the next day, which would be outside of the testing window. And then they wouldn't be able to proctor the exam because it's outside of the testing window. And then that would be something that you would have to take to the regional advisor. And extending testing windows are not usually allowed. So please make sure that you are adding your proctors very far and as far in advance as you can. Because again, you can always, if for some reason something happens and they can't proctor the exam, you can always just go in and disable them. So please make sure you're adding your proctors as soon as you know that they're going to be able to proctor the exam, because it does take overnight to populate into the system. And do not wait until the last day of your testing window. You would be surprised at how many calls we get and the frantic, I need to add my proctor. Well, we could add them, but again, they're not going to show up until the next day after testing is done. A week before the testing window starts, so the week before the first day of the testing window, the HOSA system will send out an automated email. And again, it's going to go to every proctor that's enabled. So again, making sure you disable any proctors that are not being proctors this year. But each proctor listed will receive this automated email. The automated email will have a link, and this is important. It will have a link to the testing login page. It will also have that proctor's unique login ID. Every proctor has a different login and password. Again, their login and password will be different for every single proctor. And their login ID and password should not be shared to anybody else. It's unique to them. If you have multiple proctors, they will all get the same email. It's just that the only difference will be their login information. Please make sure your proctor checks their junk or spam folder in their email if they do not get the email from the automated system. Sometimes it just goes to that folder, especially with the school restrictions for emails. It's just something that's out of our control. So we always make sure to tell the advisors to tell the proctors, please check your junk or spam folder. And again, that email will go out automatically a week before the first day of the regional online testing window. So just make sure they're aware and they're expecting that email. So in the email, like I had mentioned, they will have their login information. They will have the link to where they will log in. Once they log in, they will see directions for testing. Please make sure they know to read those directions. Very important. Once they read the directions, they will click a blue proceed button that takes them to the next step, which will show all of the members in the chapter who are registered for testing events. They will all be listed, so it doesn't matter what day what you have set up your testing, none of that matters. If the student is registered for the regional conference for a competitive event that has testing, they will be listed on there. And the student will each have a unique ID number and password, and it will be listed next to their name under the event that they're registered in. You will not see, make sure the proctor knows, I mean, they will not see events listed on there that don't have tests. So the only competitive events that will be listed on that list are competitive events that have testing. This is a strong recommendation. It's worked very well in the past. Makes things go a lot smoother for the proctor, especially if there's only one proctor and there's a large amount of students that are testing. Our recommendation is for the proctors to, once they get to that page that has the competitive event, the student name, and then their login information, is in advance, so before the testing, to print off that list and cut into strips so that each strip has the name of the competitor, their login information, and the password. That way, when the student comes in to test, he can just say, okay, Jane Doe, here's your login information, go sit down right there. And then they'll have the login information easily. If they don't do that, then they're gonna have to go one by one for each person, and it does take quite a bit of time. So please stress to the proctors, if they can print those off beforehand and can cut them by student, that they do that. Just makes things go a lot quicker. They will then direct the student to what Global National HOSA calls HOTS. It's HOTS. I'm going to show you that right now. So if you go to Global National HOSA's website here, it's just HOSA.org. You click login. Of course, it's going to have me log in, so I need to log out. But it will take you to this. Now, you want to pay attention to what's in this yellow box, because this is the HOSA Online Testing System, HOTS. This is what the students need to go to. The biggest question we get is that, well, my student is trying to get in. We get a call. My student is trying to get in and they can't get in. Their login information isn't working. That's because they're trying to log in under the HOSA apps login, and it's not going to let them log in because students don't have access to that. It's this up here in the yellow box. So you want to make sure that the proctor knows to point them. Again, they can get there by going to HOSA.org, the Global National HOSA site, clicking login, and then clicking this, the HOSA's online testing system. And then it will take them to this screen, which is the HOSA testing login. So they'll use their login and password, and same thing for the proctor. But that's the biggest call we get, the frantic call of their login information doesn't work, and it's because they're trying to log into the wrong system. They need to be logging into the HOSA's online testing system. So the proctor will need to direct the students to the HOSA online testing system to log in. But it's important to note that the students cannot begin testing until the proctor clicks the begin test button on their end. So basically, the proctor will hand out all of the login information. Everybody will be seated, direct them to the HOSA online testing system. They can log in, but they're not going to be able to actually start the test until the proctor then goes on their side of things. What they see next to each competitor, they'll click begin test. It's a blue button, I believe, so they'll see it. But basically, they just click it, and it allows the system to know that, okay, the proctor has allowed the start of the test, and then the student can then go in to start the test. The student will not be able to start the test until the proctor clicks that button. Time doesn't start. This is important to know because, the students kind of freak out. Time doesn't start until the student clicks begin test. So it's not when the proctor clicks it, it's when the student. So the proctor has to approve it, the student clicks begin test. That's when the time starts. It will automatically turn off at the end of the allotted time. So if it's a 60-minute test, it'll automatically cut off at 60 minutes, whether they're done or not. Same thing with the 90-minute test, whether they're done or not. There is a timer that is on the competitor's screen, so they will be able to watch that as they're taking the test. If the competitor finishes before the time is expired, they must click, this is important too, they must click that they finished the test at the bottom. If they don't finish before the time is expired, then it doesn't really matter because it's automatically cuts them off and it's submitted. But if it's before the time has expired, they have to click the finished test button. Then what we say to make sure there's no issues, because we have had this problem in the past, and then it becomes well, do we let the student retake the test or whatever? The student doesn't click that button and then nothing saves. So it looks like they just never took the test. And if the test is set for the last day of the testing window and they don't click that button and their test isn't saved, then that's the last day of the testing window and they can't take the test again. So you need to make sure that the proctor explains to them if they're finished before the time is expired, they need to click the finished test. And then the proctor should really go in and check because it automatically kind of populates and updates. The proctor on their end should be able to see that the student has submitted the test, so they can do a double check just to make sure. If the student, if the proctor doesn't see that the student has submitted the test on their end, that's because they haven't clicked the button, the finish test button. So they need to make sure they do that. Again, just making sure that the proctor knows if there is some type of issue logging in, it is because they're in the wrong system. They need to be in the HOSA online testing system, which is testing.hosa.org. And all of that information is sent to the proctor so that they can get that information to the students. A couple of other quick things. We've gotten questions from the proctor, where is the student on my list? Well, if the student's not on the list that the proctor sees, it's because the advisor didn't register the student for the competitive event. So again, that's why I'm saying that 3-step checking system for registration, making sure you're checking that all your students are correctly registered and in the correct competitive events, because there's really nothing we can do if it gets to the testing window and the student shows up to take the test and their name's not on the list and there's no login information, and then it's because the advisor has not registered them for the event. So just again, making sure you're checking your registration. Because if it's outside the deadline, outside the testing window, that's up to the regional advisor to whether they're going to allow a late registration or testing, an extended testing period. Because this is recorded and will be posted to the website, and you do have quite a bit of time, most of the regions, before your testing window happens, I strongly suggest that you have your proctors watch this portion of the webinar. It will be timestamped, so they don't need to watch the whole beginning part. They can just go to the section that's titled Proctors and watch this section, but it would be very beneficial for them to get this information, and also would help you for the fact that you don't have to reiterate every single thing that I just said to them, because it is a lot of information. But it is good for you to just know how the system works and how it's set up and what the proctor can expect. I know we're running over on time. That was pretty much all I wanted to mention in terms of the proctors. And especially for Space Coast, noting that because your testing window is mid-November, it'd be good for you to have your proctors watch this very quickly so that they understand what is expected of them. And then you also understand what is expected of them to make sure that you get that information across to them so that they know when to show up for the testing and what is expected of them in terms of following policies and procedures and all of that. So that is pretty much all that I wanted to cover for the registration for the Winter Spring CE conferences and Proctors. Mandy, Lloyd, if you have anything to add, please add it, and then we'll open it up for questions at this point.
No, I don't have anything. Jackie, you covered it very well. Yes, and if they could get the Proctors to watch the recording, that would be great.
And I will send out an email tomorrow once it's going to take a little bit of time to upload it to our website, but once we get it posted tomorrow, I will send out an email to all advisors of where you can find the webinar. It's in the same section as all the other ones, but I will send a reminder about that. And you can also just at that point forward it on. If you already know your proctor, you can forward it on to them and just say, please watch this. Again, we will have a timestamp for the proctor section. They don't have to watch the whole webinar. So if you have any questions, just let us know.
Jackie, I think there were some questions in the comment box that you probably need to address.
Okay. Kate with CS Charter, that's going to be a question for your regional advisor. If you haven't gotten a response, you can email them again and CC me. That usually does the trick.
I know the regional advisor, one of the regional advisors in Sunrise changed, though. It looks like she might be trying to contact Cypress Bay, but I don't think.
Yeah, Cypress Bay, the advisor that was at Cypress Bay is no longer the regional advisor. So just make sure you're looking at the regional conference table or our board of directors list and looking at your specific region and emailing the correct regional advisor, because we have this year we do have some new advisors who have changed over at the beginning of the year. But that would be a regional advisor question. And if you have issues where you're not getting responses, just let me know and I will try my best to help with that. T-shirts, I am not sure. That would be a regional, that's a regional advisor question. Usually when you're doing the registration, once you click the T-shirt, if there is a price for the T-shirt, because I think some regions have T-shirts included in the regional conference fee. Some you have to pay separately, but that price will populate once you click on the actual option activity. When you click on the T-shirt for the size, it will show how much it costs. But the regional advisor should also have relayed that information, hopefully. I had a question, not really regional conference related, but how do I remove a student from the membership list? I'm assuming that means a student that you've affiliated. We can't do that. That is on the chapter advisor agreement that the chapter advisor checks off right before they finalize affiliation. There is a section that says that once a name is entered into the system and affiliation is finalized, that person is in the system and cannot be removed. That's a global national HOSA rule and policy, so we do not have any ability to change that from our end. If you email me about it, I will forward it on to Global National HOSA, but ultimately they're the ones that make that decision of whether they would be willing to remove the student that's been affiliated or not. And a lot of times the answer is no, because again, the chapter advisor is signing off on that agreement before they finalize affiliation, that they understand the student cannot be removed.
And if it's a matter of correcting a misspelled student's member's name, if they just send us the correct spelling, their charter number, school name, we can go in and edit it to the correct spelling.
Yes. Is payment for the regional fees by check only? That's a regional advisor question. We don't handle payments for regional conferences. When is the email sent to the proctor? That the automated email from the system, it's sent a week before the first day of the online testing window. If she was added a long time ago but hasn't received an email, that's because it's not a week before the online testing window. Can Coral Springs Charter's payment for regional fees be confirmed? That's a regional advisor question. Thank you, Hillary. Lloyd, I don't confirm, but is there a way to remove proctors from the system or just disable them? I don't believe we can remove proctors from the system. We just disable them if they're not being used.
Right. You can only disable proctors. The rationale, the reason being that proctor who you're no longer using, but their information is still tied into a past conference and the competitors that took tests in those previous conferences. So it's all connected in the system, and that's why a proctor's name cannot be removed from the system because it's connected to previous competitors' test taking. If there's ever a question or incident that needs to be investigated.
Lisa, this is a question about states. No digital uploads, correct? Sorry, it's so early, but my kids are already asking. I know I've gotten a couple of questions about that. No, we are not doing digital uploads again this year. So no digital uploads at states. Can't answer if that's a forever thing, but at least for this year, we are not doing digital uploads. Can advisors be in the room in case of a school safety issue if the proctor is not familiar with school policies? Well, the proctor should be familiar with school policies because they should be a school personnel. So you really shouldn't have to be. I mean, if there's some hard, fast rule that your principal says, no, you have to be in that room, obviously we're not going to tell you no, but you can't proctor the exam. But again, they should be familiar with the school policies because they should be a faculty or teacher, like I said, librarian of some sort, no students. For students wanting to register for multiple events, is there a schedule of events posted anywhere to safeguard for conflicts of time? They can't register for multiple events. They can only register for one regular competitive event. They can register for as many recognition events as they want. If you look on the guidelines page, those are the ones in the gray box, I believe, gray boxes, but it says recognition events over the top of them. But they can register for as many recognition events as they want, but only one regular competitive event. Does online testing usually take place during school hours or after? That's a case-by-case basis on the school. It just depends on the advisor and the personnel who's available to be the proctor and when they set those times up. I think that's all the chat questions. If anybody has any other questions, you can add them into the chat or just unmute yourselves and ask away. No questions? I'm shocked.
Jackie, this is Miranda. I was the one that asked about the advisors being in the room, and I only asked that when we do our certification exams that are proctored. They told us that the teachers need to be in the room because we're the ones familiar with our room and where the safe area is and where we would evacuate to. But I guess I could always tell the proctor beforehand if anything were to happen, this is the safe area for my room and this is where you would evacuate to. so I don't have to be in the room. But that's why.
Like I said, if there's a school policy or something, like we're not gonna say no, don't follow that. Like if you are supposed to be in the room and that's completely fine. It's just that you can't proctor the exams.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
And I was going to say another option might be if it's not a policy. So as Jackie's saying, if it is, yes, we're not going to override policy. But if it's not a policy, and you still want to be close, I don't know if your room is right next to where the students would be taking their test, or what, or maybe just wait out by the hall or near the doorway. But that might be an option to be close, but not in the room.
Okay. Yeah, I have a storage/office room that's connected that I could wait in while they take their test. So, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no problem at all. Any other questions? Okay.
I was just going to say, one just came in, Jackie.
When can I register students for the Community Service Award? Okay, so for recognition events, you can register for those at when you do the registration for the state conference.
Right. Let me clarify just a little bit. The only recognition event that is normally run at a regional conference and is by request of the regional advisors is the healthcare issues exam. That is usually the only recognition category event that is run at a regional conference. All other regional category events, other than three that we don't run, which outstanding alumni, I forget what the other two events are. Let me look real quick here so I don't confuse anyone. Outstanding guidelines. Here we go. So the three recognition category events that we do not run in Florida, well, two, outstanding HOSA achievement we do not run. Outstanding HOSA alumni, Jackie would submit that if she is working with an alumni. And outstanding HOSA leader always goes to a state officer by policy of the Florida HOSA Board of Directors. The other recognition events, again, the healthcare issues exam is the only recognition category event that is usually run at a regional conference by request of the regional advisor. But the other recognition events, America's Blood Centers and HOSA Blood Drive, American Red Cross Volunteer Service, Barbara James Service Award, Health Literacy Ambassador, HOSA Happenings, and HOSA Service Project. If you have students that are in those events, yes, as Jackie said, you'll need to register them in the SLC registration, and also make sure that all deadlines are met and all requirements are met that are outlined in the event guideline. The Emotional Well-Being Challenge recognition event is run at the ILC only. So Emotional Well-Being Challenge, ILC only. So if you have students that are interested in that, they would have to go to the ILC. That would not be run at regional, state conferences, only at the international conference.
And if you have any questions about competitive events, the guidelines, what we run at states, please watch, if you haven't already, the first webinar I did on September 4th. We have it posted to our Florida HOSA website under the resources publications tab. Under advisor resources, and you just scroll down to webinars and it's listed right there. I go through the whole competitive events page of the Global National HOSA website and just kind of show the guidelines, explain what we offer at states, explain kind of the difference between the test only events and tests with skills, and then the recognition events. So I go through all of that. If you have any questions, you can definitely refer to that previous webinar. And I will do hopefully 2 more webinars. It'll be the same thing that I'll be covering in both webinars, but because there's so many more people that are, go to states and need at least the opportunity to participate in more than one scheduled webinar, I do usually offer two SLC webinars for the advisors to go through how to register for states, because that is very similar in terms of the registering for the competitive events. But like Lloyd's saying, you know, you have the extra added registrations for the recognition events and things like that. So I do go through that. I also go through all of our forms and everything that's required for states. So definitely be on that, especially if you're a new advisor. It's very helpful. The webinar recordings, I'll show you guys really quick where those can be found. Give me 1 second. Okay, so if you go to our Florida HOSA website, if you hover over resources publications and you click advisor/teacher resources, just scroll down. This second plus advisor webinars. The webinar that I'm referring to is the one on September 4th that I did. We do also have the webinars from last year. If you would like to view those. But I will again be doing 2 more new ones for this year for SLC, because there's always changes year to year. So it's better to just watch the newest one if you can. And then I will do one for ILC if you and or your members are going to ILC. But this is where you can find the one that I'm referring to. It was our welcome back webinar. I went through the Florida HOSA website, Global National HOSA website, competitive events, our welcome back rally, and our fall conference. So that all that information is in that webinar. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So when you were talking about paying for the regional conferences and you said that in the blue, that's who the checks, is that who the checks need to be made out to for the regionals, is whatever regional we're going to?
Yes, whatever's listed on the regional invoice for the regional conference, that is where the payment needs to go.
Because the issue that we're having, and I don't know if you can help me or I can reach out to my regional advisor. Sorry, I'm at my son's baseball game while we're doing
That's
this.
Okay.
The problem that we're having is our county is doing to where if it's not in our database, they're not doing the check. So the only HOSA they can find is National HOSA. And anything else, we have to go through hoops to get. We have to get forms filled out. So it sounds like I need to get a form from the regional office, one from the from Florida HOSA. So do I just contact for Florida HOSA? Do I just contact Florida HOSA and send them the paperwork that we need filled out so we can do the checks that way? So the checks don't just say National HOSA. Does that make any sense?
Yes, if for Florida, I mean, if there's something that we need to fill out for you and for you to be, in order for us to be added as a vendor for you to pay us, yes, please get that to us as soon as possible, because you won't be able to pay for SLC or ILC, because the only thing that goes to Global National HOSA are the affiliation dues. So if anything gets sent to Global National HOSA, they're going to send it back to your school. To you.
Okay, so I'll get with my bookkeeper then and get all the vendor paperwork that I need. It's this new thing, and it's so many different hoops because they went.
I know.
And I'm like, it's not like HOSA has changed. So
yeah, I know there's a lot of new hoops. I feel like teachers are jumping through this year. I've heard of a lot of different things, so I know it's been challenging. But yeah, anything that you need, from us in terms of that, let me know, and then I would just get with your regional advisor as soon as possible, and let them know that you're dealing with that type of issue. I mean, we're all usually pretty flexible when we can be, as long as there's communication from the advisors and we know that something is going on and there's an issue. We try to be as accommodating as we can to an extent.
And I'm brand new to this process, so I'm trying. And my advisor that's with me, she's never signed up for it's always been the other advisor that's done all the paperwork. So I'm having to kind of figure this out. So I'll take care of that tomorrow when I'm there. I'll get all the vendor paperwork and stuff, and I'll email it out to get all that so I can get it So then we can send out, get the checks made out to exactly who they need to be made out to.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on. Any other questions before we end the webinar? Okay, looking like no. If you think of something after the fact, just shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to help you. As always, we're available for assistance, but it's definitely helpful to watch these webinars. And like I said, especially if you're new and you have new proctors, please have them watch the proctor portion of this webinar, which will be very beneficial for them as well. So thank you all for being on. I really appreciate it. And we will talk with you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, of course.